Commodore, my 64, my Commodore 64.
Space Taxi is a classic Commodore 64 game that explores what would happen if Robert De Niro drove the space capsule from Lunar Lander.
You talking to me?
In Space Taxi, you control, well, a space taxi. Your job is to pick up passengers and then safely deliver them as quickly as possible so that you can maximize your tips. All the while, you'll be avoiding crazy obstacles like giant ping pong balls and snowflakes, dealing with radar dishes that randomly change your direction, breaking through invisible barriers, and generally just trying not to crash. Space Taxi is whimsical, challenging, and a ton of fun to play. Let's reset our taxi meter and go for a ride. Long before game dev degrees and corporate studios, many of the most creative games came from teenagers just messing around with code. John Kucher was one of them. He wrote a game called Rescue Squad while in high school. He knew the game was good enough to be published, so he started searching phone books for potential partners. Yes, this is what we had to do in the 80s. He eventually found a Baltimore-based company called Muse Software, short for Micro User Software Exchange. Muse was started in 1978 by Ed Zaron, focusing on the growing personal computer market. They struck gold with Castle Wolfenstein in 1981 and were eager to expand their catalog. They liked Rescue Squad and published it in 1983. It did well enough that they invited Kucher to work on a brand new game, which turned out to be Space Taxi. Now a university student at Johns Hopkins, Kucher had been developing a game engine and assembly language that could simulate a vehicle controlled by thrusters and affected by gravity. If you've ever played a Lunar Lander style game, you'll know the feel. That becomes the core concept for Space Taxi, which was released in 1984 to great reviews and solid sales. Unfortunately, Muse was dealing with growing pains behind the scenes and eventually declared bankruptcy after releasing one final game, Leaps and Bounds, in 1985. In Space Taxi, you are a taxi driver in a funky little space car controlled by thrusters that push you up, down, left, and right. Without any thruster power, your car will fatally speed towards the bottom of the screen under the influence of gravity. This means that you are always moving your car, tweaking it this way and that to avoid crashing, which basically happens if you touch anything. Each level has a number of platforms where passengers appear. When they do, you will need to land beside them without hitting them, and also softly. Landing too hard will wreck your taxi. Landing requires that you engage your landing gear, which is done by pressing the joystick button. But once the landing gear is engaged, you can no longer use the left and right thrusters, only up and down works. So lining up your landing and guiding yourself in slowly is key. After you land successfully, the passenger will get in your car and announce their destination. This will either be another platform on the level, or, if the level is finished, to the next level by going through a gate at the top of the screen. Successfully delivering your passenger earns $5, plus a tip based on how quickly you arrived and how smoothly you landed. Getting good tips is the best way to get a great score, and this means you need to be fast, which means crashing a lot. Getting a high score in Space Taxi is hard. Fuel is one additional factor to consider. You start with a full tank on each level, which is usually adequate. But there are a few levels where you will use a lot of fuel, and you will need to refill at least once. Doing so takes money from your own pocket, so you want to take as little as possible. And filling up while you have a passenger results in no tip, so you need to plan your refueling stops appropriately. The level design of Space Taxi is fantastic. There are 24. Well, 25, but we'll get to that, in total, and they are divided into the morning, day, and night shifts. Each shift includes 8 levels, increasing in difficulty. There are also options to play all 24 levels, either sequentially or in random order. Early levels are straightforward and are great for easing new drivers into the game. For example, the very first is called Short and Sweet and includes a single platform. After that, you will find yourself on the beach with 3 simple platforms. Those are the easiest. From there, they get progressively tougher with more platforms, more obstacles, and a number of features that are just plain evil. For example, level 6 takes place on a ping pong table with only 3 platforms, but with a ball bouncing across 2 of them, you need to plan your landings very carefully in order not to get taken out. That's one of the easier ones. As another example, the 16th level takes place in a blizzard where not only do you need to avoid getting hit by giant snowflakes, you also have to pilot your car through wind gusts that blow you around. On other levels, there are black holes, magnets, bullet storms, and lasers to avoid, or puzzles and mazes to navigate through. And as if those weren't tough enough, there are levels that mess around with your controls. On the turbocharged taxi level, your taxi's boosters are superpowered, flinging you across the screen with just the slightest touch. Or take the switch, where all of your controls are switched around and you need to quickly relearn how to drive your taxi. You certainly won't get bored with all the diversity, and it keeps the game's challenge high. But even though it's difficult, it's never unfair. Controls are crisp, responsive, and easy to master. With a bit of practice, you'll soon find yourself topping the high scoreboard. If you're good enough to pass all 24 levels in a single run, you will then also get to play the hidden 25th level. It's an easy level called Welcome to Muse World, and it includes some Easter eggs from past Muse games. There's an ambulance from Rescue Squad, a Nazi soldier from Castle Wolfenstein, and a robot from 1981's Robot War. It's a fun surprise and a full-blown relief after passing the insanely difficult 24th level. Then, after getting through all the levels and safely delivering all your passengers, you get a nice screen that congratulates you for your victory, and your space taxi flies off in the distance, ready to work another day. Graphically, Space Taxi is charming and very distinctive due to its combination of sprites and low-resolution backgrounds. It was very rare to see a professionally developed game using graphics like this, and I actually remember being surprised the first time I played back in the 80s. But as simple as the levels appear, they are colorful, fun, and expertly designed. And come on, the sprite design for the car itself is amazing. Sound-wise, Space Taxi is probably best remembered for its innovative use of digitized voices. John Kucher, who majored in electrical engineering at university, actually created the electronics for digitizing his voice for the game. And then, once recorded, he was able to change the pitch to simulate different voices. It's a really cool feature. The other sound effects are great as well. Thrusters sound good and meaty, the crashes are brutal, and the little bit of music when traveling to a new level is just fun. The Commodore 64 Appreciation Society absolutely adores Space Taxi. It was a favorite of mine back in the day and is still one that I pick up from time to time. Others love it as well. Commodore Magazine called it one of the best home arcade games ever made, and it was nominated for Action Game of the Year by Electronic Games. Also, it's reportedly the favorite game of legendary developer Jeff Minter, and that has to count for something. And it currently has an 847 score on Lemon 64, putting it just a hair outside their top 164 games of all time. There is no denying that Space Taxi is a classic, and its story doesn't end here. After it was released, Space Taxi spawned multiple clones, and Space Taxi 2 was released by Twilight Games in 2004. As for John Kucher, he spent some additional time in the game industry after Space Taxi came out, but changed direction and has had a successful career developing medical software. Thanks for the amazing game, John. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please consider leaving a like or subscribing. And if you have any Space Taxi stories of your own, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Hope to see you again.